Welcome to the After Dark. I am your host, Knil Hopper, with VanGuard.
Hey, how we doing?
We are doing fine.
Good to hear.
Or are you talking to the audience?
Either.
You need to make up your mind.
I'm just lonely. I need someone to talk to.
I really don't want you to be a woman.
Well, that's awkward.
I don't like women being on this. Nothing against women in general, just maybe if you're a manly woman.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Speaking of manly women, today's topic of interest thingy shall be the Almighty Johnsons, as you should already be aware of in the video thingy.
Almighty Johnsons.
The Almighty Johnsons. For those who, well, you all have seen it, you all know it, you should have seen it. It is a show about the Johnson brothers and their grandpa, but mostly the brothers. In this show, as you all know, they are all gods, well, humans who have gods inside them, almost, something like that. And the show itself is based around the fact that Axel Johnson, the youngest of the brothers, became Odin on his 21st, as per tradition. Not tradition to become Odin, of course, but tradition to become a god or goddess on his 21st. And he got the lucky choice of Odin, and now he was on a quest to find his freak. But, plot twist, in the final episode, he found his freak.
How unexpected.
Shockingly.
I mean, finding what you're questing after. Yeah. It's world coming to.
So that really means, as far as I know, that show ends. So here we are to discuss the final episode of the Almighty Johnsons. So immediately from the start of the episode, we have, some emotional shock going on between all the characters. They've just heard this shocking news from the Oracle Olaf, also known as Balder, that when Odin marries Frigg through the Norse marriage arrangement thingy, the gods inside of them will split from them and ascend to Asgard and become more powerful. But that also leaves their mortal bodies down below, with the whole world no longer remembering who they are. Now, I've been following this show since season 1, and I've been loving it the whole time. I had suspected one or two things, and you have also. Well,
yeah, you got me onto the show.
First thing I suspected was they'll just regain the powers and that'll be the end of the show. Second thing I suspected would be the opposite, and that they sacrifice the powers in some way at the end of the show.
Yeah, that's not many variations. Myself, I thought, are they going to ascend into Asgard, leaving the mortal realm behind? Will they have a choice whether they can go up as gods or stay behind as humans without their powers?
And then we found out we're both right. They didn't have a choice though. They ascend to Asgard, and the mortals stay behind without their powers. And really, it made for such an emotional episode. Right off from the beginning, we've seen everyone's reactions. Anders, who plays Bragi, is Bragi. Never realizing that he'd be in the Asgard realm, where being Bragi isn't exactly the biggest of things.
God of poetry, amongst big old Norse gods, fighting and beering women all night.
Being Bragi on Earth, pretty cool. Being Bragi in Asgard is alright.
Yeah, still a god, I suppose.
We find that Ty, who is Hod,
The god of all things cold and dark.
Very cool god, by the way. Frick. I do not mean to do that pun every time. Ty, who is Hod, the god of all things dark, he's worrying that Dawn won't remember him when he becomes mortal, and for good reason too. Because she won't.
Yeah, it's happened before.
That creates a very emotional scene between them. Basically creates the plot of the episode for them, creates the plot for everyone. Axel is not affected by this as much. He knows his duty to stop the Ragnarok. And it's kind of awesome to see him just still carrying on with that. Not afraid to do his choices.
Odin's mantle.
And the later scene where he confronts Frigg as the horn just gets blown by Heimdall. To hear his final words of asking Frigg to either choose him or his brother soon, no matter what, just choose one of them quickly to stop the Ragnarok. I feel like it was a big thing for him. He no longer cared who it was. He just cared that something get done. And that, in a sense, is an Odin thing to do.
Yeah. The essence of them.
Besides the whole plot that are going on, another big thing of the episode was the fact that the goddess of love, had just been murdered.
Yeah, Michelle.
So Frigg brought her back to life, but she was only alive as long as Frigg was alive. And we've seen someone who knows they're about to die in a day, how their actions are going. We're seeing all the characters at the final desperate moments, at the height of their emotions, basically. Frigg chooses Axel instead of Mike, who was the contender for being Odin.
And pretty much in the lead as well. Her heart chose him, but...
I believe it was the fact Idun and Bragi. She loved Mike, but her Frigg was calling to Odin no matter what.
God powers. Not much you can do to stop him, except for run away.
So, the whole episode is just filled with emotions. We start getting to the midway point where it's not only the dark emotions all the time, it's last day on Earth. We have Michelle stealing a car, then we have Ty as HUD, making his plans, having sex with Dawn, just doing the best to try and figure out a way. One of the coolest scenes that happens when we see Mike, who is wins all games, along with Michelle, and
Anders,
who is Bragi, who can convince anyone of anything, and we take him back to the casino. See what happened the first time they went to the casino compared to now, to have Bragi with him? See Mike just win all games, Bragi be a cool god with him there to help things go along. It's to see these gods actually put their powers and work together, to put them along with each other. And it was just a very cool scene to see it.
Yeah, I mean, by themselves, the god powers are pretty nifty, but combined, they just amplify.
God powers themselves have been very strong this season, and I think it's a way of saying that Odin is becoming more Odin. And as such, their powers increase.
He's gotten pretty far along in his quest.
And I think the biggest emotional scenes to me though was between Axel and Seb. Not just when he saw Seb at the end of the episode, with Seb not remembering who he was, but as Seb was truly saying goodbye to Axel. Seb knowing what he was doing, knowing everything that was about to happen, but still being a human himself, going to forget Axel, his best friend. The guy he had been with Axel, helping him become Odin since season 1.
Since high school, they've known each other.
And it's sort of even to me, it's a bit bigger than Dawn and Ty.
A bromance.
True bromances. And it's kind of sad. And Seb knows what's going to happen, and he knows it has to. For that brief moment, I think it's hard for Seb. But then the weight gets shifted onto Axel, who knows he'll be around Seb and Seb will no longer remember him. But still, Axel chooses to go back to living with Seb and try and recreate the friendship.
Yeah, just rekindling it. I mean, what's better, beer and pizza?
And then I think that we can all agree that the biggest emotional scene was from Loki, who didn't change at all, actually.
Well, for me, that Zeb and Axel meeting again for the first time, I started leaking a little bit.
I almost did too, actually. It's just a powerful scene. Moving on from that, from the emotional scenes between characters, something I want to think about what happens afterwards, with the powers, and everything. I mean, they have all just given up their powers. Now, Axel, I understand, his powers were always fluctuating. He could throw Thor's hammer at one point, but that was only when Thor was around. He has strength every now and then, but not at his core. He could see vision, but he didn't mean to. He never had powers that were fully under his control, and he never really cared for them.
Axel, being the youngest, having his powers the least amount of time, and like you said, he never had his true powers. He'd recover the easiest.
So it's easy to imagine how he can just get on with his life after this. Him no longer having his powers is a bonus to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't need his powers now that Loki doesn't have fire. But that's what I mean. Loki no longer has fire. He can no longer deal with the Johnson brothers like that before.
Doesn't he?
He doesn't.
When the matrimony and the ascension took place, after it, Loki or Colin, he had a little red rock. And he just throws it away. I mean, there's nothing to confirm nor deny it, but some people think that Colin managed to trap a part of his Loki inside that red gem.
We'll get back to that in a bit later, if you don't mind me saying.
Yep.
I'd like to cover that under a different subject. Still doing powers, we have Bragi. Well, now just Anders. No Bragi. Someone who has obviously lived a lot of their life using their power to persuade others. He lives in a PR business, all about persuading.
Out of the four brothers, Anders, I'd say, would have used his powers most. No contest. His powers of charm and persuasion. Yeah, like, he's in PR. At the end of the show, he has no clients. I mean, normally he'd just, get new ones with his powers, but I don't think he has any of his actual skills, the real life skills, to get clients. He was just relying on his powers.
Interesting to see how it's going to go out, especially if Dawn doesn't remember who he is.
Yeah, and that too.
That final scene where he just pops out. I would have to imagine in Dawn's head she'd be thinking, was I having a threesome? Did you tell her about me yet? That out of context is just a good scene. I mean, others like the handmaiden, Stacy, and Mike, they really didn't use their powers. Stacy for the fact that her powers didn't do anything but make her serve others. Mike for the fact that he just didn't like using his powers until later season.
So they'll both get along pretty alright?
As far as I can tell. But there's only one other person who really takes a big knockback from losing their powers. And that would be Olaf.
Yeah, Boulder the Reborn.
Besides from the visions of being Oracle, he no longer regenerates every day. He's going to age and die. He's lived a long life, yes, but this is the first time it's finally hit him that he's going to die a lot quicker than he thought.
Well, at least he didn't just instant age up to his real age of 90 or so.
Like when Axel became sick. Yeah. I was curious if that would happen.
But someone else who would suffer from the powers, Kvasir, the
no longer being as wise and no longer being able to just turn himself into liquid.
Yeah, a thought occurred to me. So, their powers have ascended and they're mortal now. What happens if Kvasir, that name's hard to say,
was using his liquid power while...
If he was in that form, would he be water or would he
be
come
dead
into a drain?
I'm going to willingly say that he would be dead. No questions asked. If that would happen, he's dead. I don't imagine him. Imagine your god power leaving you at the same time. He's just liquid. No way to reconstruct himself. He's gone.
And also, now instead of being the wisest man on Earth, he's just a bum.
Pretty much.
Sucks to be him.
So, I just want to quickly go back to Olaf for a second. Not about his powers, but I think during season 2 when I saw Mike yell at him, I was sort of happy for Mike to yell at him because I thought myself that Olaf has been useless. But the second last episode, to hear from Olaf himself how stressful it is to be an Oracle, when even he himself knows the fact that Oracles cannot get it right almost all the time because it's Chinese whispers to them.
Yeah. He mentioned that he got one word wrong in prophecy where they didn't know that they were going into where the gods would leave him.
Rule Earth, rule over.
Yeah. Rule as gods on Earth, again, as opposed to rule as gods over Earth. I mean, on, over? Yeah, Chinese whispers.
It's just one word. A lot of confusion, yes, but still just one word. Emotional to see him, then finally realize how hard it must be to actually be an Oracle fan.
Not just an instant power. Plus, his Oracle powers have been diluted over the years due to his drug abuse.
Good point.
And another god who'd be affected, but not so much as the others, is Susie, Odin's best friend.
I don't think she'll be affected as much. She'll just stop giving away free beer.
Yeah, I mean, her pub looked, decent, and that's why she doesn't pay for any of the booze.
I think the fact that she didn't know she was a goddess works in her advantage here, where she no longer knows she can just do that beer thing.
Her prices are gonna skyrocket.
I don't think they will, because it wasn't free beer. She's just accidentally giving out a little bit of free beer here and there. Obviously, she's gonna get money still as ever, and probably just have a little bit extra prices for certain beer.
Maybe. And also Thor. He was one of the most into their god parts.
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, enthusiastic. He wasn't Derek. He was more Thor than Derek.
I loved Thor.
Yeah.
And that's true, he's Thor more than Derek. he respected Odin, regardless. He was truly for, and he was a great god. Always a great character to see. And yes, he may no longer be for, and that may cause confusion. But power-wise, he had a hammer. He could throw it, kill rabbits.
He hates rabbits.
At least it's not a power that kept him going each day. And, you know what, speaking of powers and gods, do you remember in Season 2 when we had the Papua New Guinea gods? Not Papua New Guinea, like the Maori gods.
Maori.
That reminds us, there are gods everywhere, right? Obviously there's, so, is that how it's going to work for all of them? If they had found their prophecy goddess, they would have ascended?
How will the ascension affect the Maori gods? Would they even know that anything's happened?
Same with any other god out there. I don't think they'll know. Or maybe they will, because as we saw in Michelle getting revived, perhaps the others would just notice from strange acts happening.
And would they remember the Norse gods being?
Well, they're gods as well, so...
Yeah, but it might be outside of... I mean, they're not Norse gods.
That's not a question we can really answer here, but... Cassia said there's only difference when it comes between being gods and mortals. From that, we can at least assume that a god can remember another god no longer being a god.
Yeah, my mind would be on them remembering.
Coming back to what you said before about the Redstone and Loki, I want to talk possibilities of... I haven't checked. So far, it looks like the show has ended, right?
Mm-hmm. There's no confirmation of a new series.
I haven't actually gone online yet and checked.
They wrapped it up pretty well.
If it could continue on, there's only really two ways to go about it, I suppose. I mean, you can keep the focus on Axel and all that, and The Almighty Johnsons is a show about the gods. You can't just have a show of saying the aftermath of losing their powers. It'd most likely be some way of them having reformed some kind of powers.
Yeah, if they did have another series, which they have left it open so they could, I think, with the stone, I'd say it'd go down something like this. So Colin, using the gemstone, repowers up and becomes Loki again, and that'd probably force the Johnsons to somehow...
I'd say if that would happen to be more like Odin himself tasks a Johnson brother with becoming the god again.
Yeah.
I find that... I mean, hey, that's just a far stretch at the moment of what could possibly happen if they continue. If they continue. The only way I can think is to no longer focus on the Johnsons and instead switch to, say, Greek gods or something. But it wouldn't be the same as the Norse, I think.
No. I mean, hell, they could do Hindu gods or any other culture they want.
There's something a bit about that we've just come to love about the Norse gods at the moment, but switching the concept of characters and who it's all about, it happens if you want to make a new show. I suppose if they've gotten a good reception, maybe they've already planned something. If they've not gotten the best reception, maybe they decide to just end it.
Well, I mean, if they do end it, it's a good place to end it.
Two things. First of all, I'd just like to say, brilliant camera work there. Like what music they were playing for it. It was just a very nice, relaxing episode there. And unlike most shows, when you watch, what show I can't. Something like Doctor Who, I guess. Oh no, not Doctor Who. That's a bad example for what I'm trying to say. Avatar, blue Avatar things, the Navi.
Big Smurfs. Yeah.
When people watch that movie, to them it was like perfect paradise, new world away. They wanted to live there. They understood how everything worked. And to have the thing end, it was like, give us more of that world. But the way the Almighty Johnson's is it's our world with just a little bit extra spice. It was so much like our world that when it ended, it was just our world the same way. And there's no feeling of needing more because we know how our world works. We know it all. The only thing we want more is a bit more of that spice.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to accept the ending.
Jumping back a little bit to after effects of gods losing the powers. Once again, Colin. At one point in the series, he ran to become the mayor of Auckland.
Are we going to be talking about the joke of what would happen if he became mayor and then everyone forgot him?
Kind of. Just that he mentioned in the finale his campaign. I mean, there's posters and campaign ads and
We have to
YouTube
remember,
videos, right?
he removed himself from the running, he's taken everything down. I'd say no matter who's seen it, is looking at it, they're just going to think, oh, who's that guy?
But still, there's be some, evidence people be confused.
Or it'd be the same with how Dawn was reacting at the beginning of the season. It's just mild headaches or confusion or whatever.
But there's physical evidence somewhere.
Somewhere. But who's going to dig it up? There's physical evidence that Pi owned a building.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, if someone does come across it, they'll think it's odd and probably just move on.
One of the last things I'd just like to think about for the future.
Hmm.
Who do you think Axel's going to get? I mean, he could be a Gaia now.
Yeah.
Or there was Odin's best friend who he really loved, or starting to love.
Yeah, but that's more of a...
I'm curious if it was a god thing or he just liked it. But
a bit of both.
I could imagine him being one of those who, now that the show is, like, the whole god thing is out of the way.
Yeah. All the Johnsons and extended family and gods were in the forest when their powers ascended, yeah?
Those who weren't in the forest, yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly have to say they're probably going to feel confusion and not know what's going on. I'd say that those who have lost their powers are probably those who know of Odin being Axel will probably contact. We can definitely say that Odin's best friend won't know. Like, won't even realise. I can think Gaia and Paul, I can't remember his name. Derek. Gaia and Derek calling Axel probably. So other than that, don't really know the other gods well enough to say it, to say what they'd probably do.
Yes.
It's been a good show. I've had a good reign with it. A lot of lovely scenes, a lot of good music, a lot of sex scenes that I personally haven't cared for. Although it was kind of nice in the last episode. A lot of craziness, a lot of good jokes here and there. Bulk moots, sword bites, Axel creating signs by riding alone on a motor in only underwear.
The Amazing Johnsons is a very underappreciated series.
Especially if you're going to just be calling them the Amazing Johnsons.
Almighty, yes.
The Almighty
Amazingly Almighty Johnsons.
So amazingly almighty.
AJ. One quick thing I'd like to say that I know so makes them stand out. In Season 2, Ty's wife, Eva, goddess of hell, she was murdered, about mid-season. Pretty much every other show out there would have dragged out the identity of a killer for the rest of the season. And then the final episode, done a big reveal, was this person.
And they just instantly showed the next episode.
Yeah, the very next episode. Oh, it was your mum. No biggie.
The Almighty Johnsons certainly has a different way of going about things. It makes things looks as ordinary in real life as it can be. As well as having its strange sadistic twist being does.
I mean, that was a great twist of the normal TV formula that's been used to death. Pardon the pun.
As I said, it's what's been making the show great. It's differences. Found it, I'll just say, I would love to see more to show, to see what they could do with it. But if not, a little bit sad not to see more, but it ended in a way where I can just accept every number.
Leave it up to your imagination.
Hey, I'll go read a good fan fiction, right? Thor and Odin getting together.
You like it kinky, eh?
I'm sure Thor did. Till next time, you've been listening to the After Dark. Hope you've had a good time listening to us ramble on about stuff you probably know or have made opinions about. Please, if you watch this, leave a comment about what you agree or disagree with, what you'd like us to comment on in the future, and whether you hate us or not. I do love to know when people are hating me.
I just know. I can sense it.
See ya.